Full and partial. An important dispute in formal epistemology concerns the question of whether beliefs should be conceptualized as full beliefs or as partial beliefs. Full beliefs are all or nothing attitudes. Either one has a belief in a proposition or one does not. This conception is sufficient to understand many belief ascriptions found in everyday language. For example, Pedro's belief that the Earth is bigger than the Moon. But some cases involving comparisons between beliefs are not easily captured through full beliefs alone. For example, that Pedro's belief that the Earth is bigger than the Moon is more certain than his belief that the Earth is bigger than Venus. Such cases are most naturally analyzed in terms of partial beliefs involving degrees of belief. So-called CREDENCES. The higher the degree of a belief, the more certain the believer is that the believed proposition is true. This is usually formalized by numbers between 0 and 1. A degree of 1 represents an absolutely certain belief. A belief of 0 corresponds to an absolutely certain disbelief, and all the numbers in between correspond to intermediate degrees of certainty. In the Bayesian approach, these degrees are interpreted as subjective probabilities. For example, a belief of degree 0.9 that it will rain tomorrow means that the agent thinks that the probability of rain tomorrow is 90%. Bayesianism uses this relation between beliefs and probability to define the norms of rationality in terms of the laws of probability. This includes both synchronic laws about what one should believe at any moment and diachronic laws about how one should revise one's beliefs upon receiving new evidence. The central question in the dispute between full and partial beliefs is whether these two types are really distinct types or whether one type can be explained in terms of the other. One answer to this question is called the Lockean thesis. It states that partial beliefs are basic and that full beliefs are to be conceived as partial beliefs above a certain threshold. For example, every belief above 0.9 is a full belief. Defenders of a primitive notion of full belief, on the other hand, have tried to explain partial beliefs as full beliefs about probabilities. On this view, having a partial belief of degree 0.9 that it will rain tomorrow is the same as having a full belief that the probability of rain tomorrow is 90%. Another approach circumvents the notion of probability altogether and replaces degrees of belief with degrees of disposition to revise one's full belief. From this perspective, both a belief of degree 0.6 and a belief of degree 0.9 may be seen as full beliefs. The difference between them is that the former belief can readily be changed upon receiving new evidence while the latter is more stable. Belief in and belief that. Traditionally, philosophers have mainly focused in their inquiries concerning belief on the notion of belief that. Belief that can be characterized as a propositional attitude to a claim which is either true or false. Belief in, on the other hand, is more closely related to notions like trust or faith in that it refers usually to an attitude to persons. Belief in plays a central role in many religious traditions in which belief in God is one of the central virtues of their followers. The difference between belief in and belief that is sometimes blurry since various expressions using the term belief in seem to be translatable into corresponding expressions using the term belief that instead. For example, a belief in fairies may be said to be a belief that fairies exist. In this sense, belief in is often used when the entity is not real or its existence is in doubt. Typical examples would include, he believes in witches and ghosts, or many children believe in Santa Claus, or I believe in a deity. Not all usages of belief in concern the existence of something. Some are commendatory in that they express a positive attitude towards their object. It has been suggested that these cases can also be accounted for in terms of belief that. For example, a belief in marriage could be translated as a belief that marriage is good. Belief in is used in a similar sense when expressing self-confidence or faith in oneself or one's abilities. Defenders of a reductive account of belief in have used this line of thought to argue that belief in God can be analyzed in a similar way. For example, that it amounts to a belief that God exists with his characteristic attributes, like omniscience and omnipotence. Opponents of this account often concede that belief in may entail various forms of belief that, but that there are additional aspects to belief in that are not reducible to belief that. For example, a belief in an ideal may involve the belief that. If you have reached this far, thanks for your time. Can you subscribe and share this video? This ideal is something good, but it additionally involves a positive evaluative attitude toward this ideal that goes beyond a mere propositional attitude. Applied to the belief in God, opponents of the reductive approach may hold that a belief that God exists may be a necessary precondition for belief in God, but that it is not sufficient. De dicto and de re. The difference between de dicto and de re beliefs, or the corresponding ascriptions, concerns the contributions singular terms like names and other referential devices make to the semantic properties of the belief or its ascription. In regular context, the truth value of a sentence does not change upon substitution of co-referring terms. For example, since the names Superman and Clark Kent refer to the same person, we can replace one with the other in the sentence, Superman is strong, without changing its truth value. This issue is more complicated in case of belief ascriptions. For example, Lois Lane believes that Superman is strong, but she does not believe that Clark Kent is strong. This difficulty arises due to the fact that she does not know that the two names refer to the same entity. Beliefs, or belief ascriptions, for which this substitution does not generally work are de dicto. Otherwise, they are de re. In a de re sense, Lois does believe that Clark Kent is strong, while in a de dicto sense she does not. The contexts corresponding to de dicto ascriptions are known as referentially opaque contexts, while de re ascriptions are referentially transparent. Collective belief. A collective belief is referred to when people speak of what we believe when this is not simply elliptical for what we all believe. Sociologist Emil Durkheim wrote of collective beliefs and proposed that they, like all social facts, inhered in social groups as opposed to individual persons. Jonathan Dancy states that Durkheim's discussion of collective belief, though suggestive, is relatively obscure. Margaret Gilbert has offered a related account in terms of the joint commitment of a number of persons as a body to accept a certain belief. According to this account, individuals who together collectively believe something need not personally believe it individually. Gilbert's work on the topic has stimulated a developing literature among philosophers. One question that has arisen is whether and how philosophical accounts of belief in general need to be sensitive to the possibility of collective belief. Collective belief can play a role in social control and serve as a touchstone for identifying and purging heresies, deviancy, or political deviationism. Lay theory. A lay theory is an informal, common-sense explanation that people give for particular social behaviors. Unlike formal scientific theories, lay theories often reflect intuitive beliefs that may diverge significantly from empirical findings. These theories are important because they influence how individuals interpret the world, make decisions, and behave in various contexts. While lay theories have been studied previously, recent comprehensive research has begun to explore the structure, origins, stability, and consequences of these beliefs across a range of domains. Can you subscribe? All right, if you have done so, let's continue. Contents. As mental representations, beliefs have contents, which is what the belief is about or what it represents. Within philosophy, there are various disputes about how the contents of beliefs are to be understood. Holists and molecularists hold that the content of one particular belief depends on or is determined by other beliefs belonging to the same subject, which is denied by atomists. The question of dependence or determination also plays a central role in the internalism-externalism debate. Internalism states that the contents of someone's beliefs depend only on what is internal to that person and are determined entirely by things going on inside this person's head. Externalism, on the other hand, holds that the relations to one's environment also have a role to play in this. Atomism, molecularism, and holism. The disagreement between atomism, Molecularism and holism concerns the question of how the content of one belief depends on the contents of other beliefs held by the same subject. Atomists deny such dependence relations. Molecularists restrict them to only a few closely related beliefs, while holists hold that they may obtain between any two beliefs, however unrelated they seem. For example, assume that May and Benjamin both affirm that Jupiter is a planet. The most straightforward explanation, given by the atomists, would be that they have the same belief, that is, that they hold the same content to be true. But now assume that May also believes that Pluto is a planet, which is denied by Benjamin. This indicates that they have different concepts of planet, which would mean that they were affirming different contents when they both agreed that Jupiter is a planet. This reasoning leads to molecularism or holism because the content of the Jupiter belief depends on the Pluto belief in this example. An important motivation for this position comes from W.V. Quine's conformational holism, which holds that, because of this interconnectedness, we cannot confirm or disconfirm individual hypotheses. That confirmation happens on the level of the theory as a whole. Another motivation is due to considerations of the nature of learning. It is often not possible to understand one concept, like force in Newtonian physics, without understanding other concepts, like mass or kinetic energy. One problem for holism is that genuine disagreements seem to be impossible or very rare. Disputants would usually talk past each other since they never share exactly the same web of beliefs needed to determine the content of the source of the disagreement. Internalism and externalism. Internalism and externalism disagree about whether the contents of our beliefs are determined only by what's happening in our head or also by other factors. Internalists deny such a dependence on external factors. They hold that a person and a molecule-by-molecule copy would have exactly the same beliefs. Hilary Putnam objects to this position by way of his twin Earth thought experiment. He imagines a twin Earth in another part of the universe that is exactly like ours, except that their water has a different chemical composition despite behaving just like ours. According to Putnam, the reader's thought that water is wet is about our water, while the reader's twin's thought on twin Earth that water is wet is about their water. This is the case despite the fact that the two readers have the same molecular composition. So it seems necessary to include external factors in order to explain the difference. One problem with this position is that this difference in content does not bring any causal difference with it. The two readers act in exactly the same way. This casts doubt on the thesis that there is any genuine difference in need of explanation between the contents of the two beliefs. Epistemology. Epistemology is concerned with delineating the boundary between justified belief and opinion, and involved generally with a theoretical philosophical study of knowledge. The primary problem in epistemology is to understand what is needed to have knowledge. In a notion derived from Plato's dialogue Theaetetus, where the epistemology of Socrates most clearly departs from that of the sophists, who appear to have defined knowledge as justified true belief. The tendency to base knowledge episteme on common opinion doxa Socrates dismisses results from failing to distinguish a dispositive belief doxa from knowledge episteme when the opinion is regarded correct in b gup, or thenautolithia in terms of right, and juristically so, according to the premises of the dialogue, which was the task of the rhetors to prove. Plato dismisses this possibility of an affirmative relation between opinion and knowledge, even when the one who opines grounds his belief on the rule and is able to add justification logos. Reasonable and necessarily plausible assertions/evidence/guidance to a. Belief can be based fully or partially on intuition. Plato has been credited for the justified true belief theory of knowledge, even though Plato in the Theaetetus elegantly dismisses it, and even posits this argument of Socrates as a cause for his death penalty. The epistemologists Gidier and Goldman have questioned the justified true belief definition. Justified true belief. Justified true belief is a definition of knowledge that gained approval during the Enlightenment. Justified standing in contrast to revealed. There have been attempts to trace it back to Plato and his dialogues, more specifically in the Theaetetus and the Meno. The concept of justified true belief states that in order to know that a given proposition is true, one must not only believe the relevant true proposition but also have justification for doing so. In more formal terms, an agent S_S knows that a proposition P_P is true if and only if P_P is true. S_S believes that P_P is true, and S_S is justified in believing that P_P is true. That theory of knowledge suffered a significant setback with the discovery of Gettier problems, situations in which the above conditions were seemingly met, but where many philosophers deny that anything is known. Robert Nozick suggested a clarification of justification, which he believed eliminates the problem. The justification has to be such that were the justification false, the knowledge would be false. Bernecker and Dretske 2000 argue that no epistemologist since Gettier has seriously and successfully defended the traditional view. 3. On the other hand, Paul Bokoshin argues that the justified true belief account is the standard, widely accepted definition of knowledge. Alright, that's it for now. See you in part 3 for further explanation. Can you subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video? Once again, thanks for your time.